If you're listening to this, there's a good chance you work within the real estate investing industry. There's another good chance that you would like to increase the sales of your products or services. Well, you're in the right place. United States Real Estate Investor is a platform you need to place your brand directly in front of your target audience. With our focused, growing audience of real estate investing beginners, enthusiasts, and seasoned professionals, you can continually reach our captivated viewers and listeners with ease. To learn more or to get started today, just visit UnitedStatesRealEstateInvestor.com/advertising. That's UnitedStatesRealEstateInvestor.com/advertising. Get ready to increase your brand awareness and your bottom line. Attract clients with content.
Universe. Media. Network. 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 Network.
Welcome to This Month in Real Estate Investing, where we separate the noise out of the news. I'm your host, James Brown, and I show people how they can make safe, secure returns through our pre-vetted passive investments. I also help people, kind of handhold people too as well. So feel free to join our private investor club so you can get exclusive opportunity alerts that we don't advertise to the general public. Just go to acceleratemycapital.com/invest. In this episode, we're going to cover multiple news items, including 5-year real estate investing forecast, Newsom cracks down on predatory wildfire investors, and Trump issues executive order on emergency housing price relief. And don't forget, if you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, you can share your thoughts and questions during the show. Let's go ahead and start the show. We got a video queued up here. Our producer's trying to get it going. Why don't we just skip it? We'll just get into our guests today. So we've got two repeat guests, Frank Iglesias, Joe Bodick, and Brian Rudderow. You're going to have to correct me, Brian, if I said it wrong. In that order, why don't you guys briefly introduce yourselves and share your background and what types of investing you focus on? Uh-oh. We might be having some major issues. Normally we can bring everybody in here. Hang tight. Grab your coffee like I am. Sometimes we have issues. Okay. All right. Antonio got things running there. So let's go ahead and introduce yourselves. So Frank, Joe, and Brian in that order.
Yeah, Frank Iglesias, real estate investor, entrepreneur, business owner out of Atlanta, Georgia, playing around in construction, rentals, and now we're doing cabinet work as a service provider and also a coach. So happy to be here and share and hopefully be of value.
Awesome. Good to have you back.
Yeah, it's Joe Bodick, real estate investor and mentor coach. Basically work with creative real estate. My all-time favorite are lease options, in case you were wondering what I lean towards.
Woo-hoo.
But work with subject to and owner financing, anything in creative real estate. And basically, after 30 years of going out and getting deals myself, I've been a mentor coach for about the last 12 years or so.
Fantastic. Cool. Brian.
Hey, my name is Brian Rudderow. I'm based out of Colorado Springs area, and I've been doing house flipping, specializing in squatter properties, squatter evictions, and just getting into commercial and subject to deals.
Oh, fantastic. I'm in Denver, so we're just down the road. Actually, I'm driving down there in the snowstorm tonight. So wish me luck.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck.
We'll have to touch base. Okay,
Sure.
cool. Let's we'll touch base later. Let's get into the news. So first article from Housing Wire. Many homeowners have a death grip on their properties with no plans to sell. That is causing a problem, as all of us know. How is it affecting you guys?
Well, for me, to be honest, the crazier it gets out there in creative real estate, the crazier it gets out there, the better it is for me. Among all those people, when those people are not selling their houses, obviously you've got housing shortage. What it brings to the surface for creative real estate, and creative real estate people understand we're problem solvers. Okay, we're not realtors. You don't come bring the house to us and we put it on the MLS and that kind of thing. We come in and solve problems. And when you have tight markets like this, you've got people that need to sell their properties, plus the interest rates. Let's add that in there, okay? That create big problems for people. And you have people that have problems such as they've got their old house on the market, bought a new one, can't get the old one sold because of the interest rates or whatever. People are getting laid off, as you've seen in the news, and all that kind of stuff. So it affects my creative real estate people in a very positive manner, because we're able to come in there, and people that haven't been able to move their properties conventionally because of the problems out there, we can come in and help them with things like subject to and lease options and owner financing and things of that nature, and get them out from under their problems. So as far as creative real estate people are concerned, this is not a bad time. It's actually a good time for us. Not so great for the regular conventional people out there, though.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
It's an interesting thing. I was looking at the stats in the article, and it was talking about, this percentage is going to wait X number of years. This percentage will wait this many years. This percentage doesn't ever want to sell. But the reality is life changes for people. Like right now, we came out of an inflationary period. And while inflation is down, the cost of everything is not down. So plenty of people will say, well, the spreadsheet might say inflation is down, but life has not come down in terms of cost. In fact, it's still going up in some cases. So I think this, and while these stats are nice, the reality is a ton of people got great mortgages, right? That quite frankly, if they don't have to sell them, they're not, right? And why would they unless they're going to get a deal that is not only financially better, or at least equal, but and if it's not financially better, the situation that they're moving to has to be better, right? So like, why would they sell assuming they're happy where they are? And a lot of people are, some are not, but they'll figure it out. But the reality is life will change. We just had a new administration come in a few days ago, and they're busy. They're rocking and rolling, whether we agree or disagree. The point is they're making things happen. And these events in particular, I think over the next 4 years, could take something like this, and it might not change, but it could radically change depending on what we see with the economy. So to me, this is just a moment in time. It's the moment we're in as real estate investors. We're in the problem solving business. So let's go solve some problems, because they're always going to be there.
That's true. Yeah. Antonio put in the chat there, like everyone was waiting for the baby boomers to sell, even their children, which is a good point. Yeah. And that's not happening, right? They're just staying in place. So that's held things up.
Well, multi-generational living is also up in some parts of the country.
Yeah. And
so, and if that continues to increase, even less reason, right? Because now you got even more family members under one roof, and that's been on the increase.
Yeah. And co-living, like what we're in, renting by the room, just that's not talking about buying and selling homes, but that's the rents. Rents are still high, so that's solving a problem with the ability. Some are choosing to do that. They like to live with other people. Some are just forced into that, right? So, and same with like similar kind of thought process with buying and selling homes. The people that are forced to sell, it's because of death in the family or a divorce, or maybe they've got children, growing family. They've got to move up and buy something that's got more room. And then where there's opportunity for us, unfortunately, is foreclosures are on the rise, more in some markets than others. But yeah. Brian, did you have anything to comment on that before we jump to the next one?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of journalists in the real estate industry asking questions about this generational housing problem with the boomers unwilling to let go of their properties, with Gen Z unable to find properties. And what I'm seeing across my leads is the margins are just a lot thinner on most of the deals that I'm getting. So that's why I started looking at creative financing so that I could try to close some of these thin margin deals, because most of the leads that I'm seeing coming in are people that just bought their house in 2022 and then they're trying to sell it now. But in a lot of cases, it's worth less than when they bought it in 22. So there's just a lot less of a margin.
Oh, yeah. Yep, that's what I'm finding. I'm licensed as a realtor, so I'm finding that too. When they usually just don't have enough if they bought it that soon, to cover compensation for agents and their closing costs. So that's where creative financing comes in. So
one of the things. Go ahead, Brian.
No, and just kind of real quick, this idea of creative finance, and I love creative finance, right? We all do, because you do some good stuff, but we got to be careful. The thing I'm seeing a lot right now is a lot of sub-2 deals come in. And a perfect example is yesterday. Somebody pitched me one. The cash flow, if you kept it as a rental short term, was $600 in the negative per month. The equity was non-existent. In fact, if you put it on the open market and paid 6% to realtors, assuming nothing else, it was about $5,000 upside down. But it's being pitched as a sub-2 deal. And I remember asking the gentleman who brought it to me, I'm like, what's the play? And this is what I think was the danger with creative, because I love creative, but I feel like it's being pitched so much without people understanding what's the problem we're trying to solve, going back to what Joe was saying. Because I asked this person, why is the seller selling? And his answer was, well, I don't know. And I'm like, let's start, because then maybe there's a way to figure something out, right? And I think that's something we get so, because sub-2 is hot right now, Facebook sub-2, right? It's like, but what's the problem we're solving? And I think we've lost that focus in some communities, and we got to be careful.
Yeah, that's the number one question you ask, as Joe knows. You can talk more about it, Joe. And then the exit, right? Like, I just had somebody bring a deal to me as well. Complicated thing, but I see these all the time where I was looking at it like, first of all, my first question was like, what's the situation? Why does this have to be sold? But then I was like, running my numbers as a co-living home, because that's what they're doing right now. And it's just, if they have vacancy, they're screwed, right? So it's just not working. But then I always underwrite co-living as if it's a long-term rental, which is almost impossible to do in Colorado. If that was the case, it'd be like you were saying, this one's 1,000 underwater. I'm like, I'm not touching that, because like if something goes wrong, you can't cash flows co-living.
Well, people pitch short-term rental all the time, right? Sure. Oh, it doesn't work long-term, short-term. Well, it might work, but then like you said, if you have one bad month or 2-3 bad months,
yeah,
now you inherited a problem and you don't have a second way out.
Yeah, or rules change. and they say, oh, no more short-term rentals, or it's got to be your primary, like here in Denver, right? So
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
problem. So we just got to be careful as investors. We got to be careful.
yeah, so many bad sub 2 deals. I'm in the sub 2 community, Pace Morbies, and yeah, we've looked at a lot of deals that were bad or started out that seemed good. Somebody got into them and then they went downhill because of some reason or another. So I'm always I'm cautioning people. So, all right, Joe, I know you're ready to jump in here.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just sitting on my butt was getting tired. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I
I was just going to say one of the things is that when you have those problems that Frank mentioned and Brian mentioned with regard to houses being underwater, sub two, look, sub two, you got to get the deed. It's not the easiest thing in the world. But the way that I work with properties that are underwater is with lease options, and the reason being is because you can put a lease option time limit for as long as you want. You can put it for 10 years, 30 years, 20 years, whatever it is. So what you do when you have a property that's underwater, you have a longer lease period. And the longer you have the lease period, the more equity grows in the property. And you do a little math homework and you can kind of figure out, well, at such and such a date, we're probably going to be, we're going to be positive. And once you get them into some positive equity, you can move the property. It don't have to be a lot. But so one secret for all your listeners out there is that if you're having a problem selling the house because it's underwater, a lease option is a good way to do it. And all you have to do is give them get a long-term lease so you can build that equity back up in the property. It's a lot easier than if you're really underwater with a sub two, because you have the same problems if you're in a sub two. You don't in a lease option.
Wait, so are you just helping people set them up and get lease option buyers, or are you doing like a sandwich lease option?
Well, you could do either. You could do a sandwich lease option or a wholesale lease option. But the key to the deal when it's underwater is a long-term lease to the tenant buyer. And the one thing I can tell you is that the people that need to sell, let's forget about the people that want to sell for the moment. The people that need to sell, they'll do whatever you want to get out of that property. So if you want a 10 or 15-year lease, you can get it because all they want to do is get out from under that mortgage, and they're perfectly happy to let you. And in those instances, I would do a sandwich lease option because you got the rent spread coming in every month. So, but that is a way to help that seller, and obviously help a buyer that can't get into a conventional deal through a bank. And it works out for everyone. I've done them, a number of times, and everybody was pretty happy.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Brian, I didn't see if do you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, as far as the sub 2 thing, I've been looking into it as well. And yeah, it does seem like the best option for doing these creative deals with these thin margins, like I was saying before. So that's why I started getting into it. And, I'm really trying to learn more about it. I just kind of got into it. So I'm still getting my feet wet on the sub 2 side of things. But I have done contracts for deeds before where I wrote like a lease option, sort of a rent to own scenario. But that deal ended up not working out. It only went for 4 years. And then the sellers defaulted on the contract. But that's the good thing. The main benefit of this strategy is when you first put the property under contract, the margin's not there. But then once you get a couple of years down the line and get some appreciation under there, then the principal of the loan goes down, and then the value of the house goes up, and they cross each other in opposite directions, hopefully.
I'd like to hear about that.
Brian or James, one of the things about sub twos is that, and I'm not knocking sub twos, but you're really in the same position as a homeowner, okay? Because nothing's changed, okay? You're picking it up for the mortgage amount, whatever that may be. If it's underwater, if you get along, if you're going to hold it a long time, but it all depends on the numbers, obviously. So And the other thing about subject to is, of course, you got to get the deed. So you need somebody that's really in trouble to give you their deeds. I've found lease options, you don't have to worry about all that stuff because it's a lease. So, it's not a big deal. They're not handing you their deed and so forth. If anything goes wrong, you can give the property back. So nobody's hurt. Okay. And with the other thing about what Brian just said was that lease option didn't work out. And I remember the first lease option I did, it did not work out. I came into, I didn't get the rent, so I came to check out the place and people were gone. Thank God the place was, they left it clean and so forth. And I did get upset. I mean, I really got upset for about 38, 39 seconds until I realized I could do it all over again. Okay. I had the house. And all I did was I called the seller and said, hey, here's what happened. The guy left. You want the house back? You want me to keep going? They never tell you they want the house back. Okay. It's always keep going. And, you get to do the deal all over again. So I want them to fulfill their obligation. I want them to get the house. That's the whole purpose. But if they can't, for whatever reason, I'm not hurt, to be honest with you. I just go out and do it all over again. Matter of fact, I had one down the street, not far from where I am. I actually sold 4 times. Had a guy die, had a guy move to Florida, had a guy get divorced. The 4th guy is a guy that bought it. And that didn't really bother me too much, so it gives you a lot of leverage. That's all I'm trying to say.
Cool. I might have you on our show. I co-host the Mr. Rent to Own Homes show. So there'd be some good topics we could come up with, I'm sure. So,
love to do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's jump into the next article, keep things moving along. So from Redfin News, U.S. asking rents ended 2024 at the lowest level in nearly 3 years. Are you guys seeing the same thing? In the article, it's market dependent, right? So like Austin was down 16%, Tampa 10%, Jacksonville 6%, but in Providence it was up 12%, Virginia Beach 10%, Louisville, whatever you want to call it, 10%. So,
well, it may be the lowest it's been in 3 years, but it's still up.
Yeah,
25% from 3 years ago. So, right. So it's,
yeah,
it's a great headline to get you to read it. Right. But then you look at their chart and you're like, well, it might be down, but it's still high. So I think it's one of those where, it is, did you buy the property? If you're investing in the property, did you buy it to account for that kind of fluctuation? I remember when I started investing, the teachers, the gurus, whatever you want to call them, they'd be like, oh, if you make $250 a month on a creative deal, for example, or even if you bought it and put traditional financing, you're good. And, but fast forward 16 years, that's a death trap, right? Because the cost of, just basic home maintenance have increased. So it's like, so to me, it's like, I think this will certainly help some people, right? Because I think I saw an article a few months ago now that said something like 70+% of people renting on paper could not afford their rent. So this is a welcome change for those people. But if you're the one investing in these, you still got to be cautious because they might go down more, right? So you gotta be conservative when you're doing these things. One thing I've learned in 16 years, be conservative and never do anything on speculation. That's a lesson we've learned multiple times over. But hopefully with the rents decreasing, it puts more people in a position to where if they are renting, they can actually pay their rent. I know a lot of people had trouble, and it doesn't matter if it was creative, straight up rental ownership. It just seemed like almost every investor I knew in 2024 had more problems with tenants than they did ever, regardless of how it was financed. That was what we saw in a lot of the markets that I talked to.
Yeah. We'll talk about what's coming. I'm sure we can I'll do some speculating. What are the other guys seeing? Is it affecting you at this point?
Well,
Or do you see
Yeah,
it?
I mean, just to tag. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say real quick, just to tag on what Frank said about people with rental owners having problems with tenants. Almost every lead I get that has an occupied property either has squatters or holdover tenants or tenants that are behind on the rent. So even though the rents are coming down, tenants are still having huge problems covering those payments.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Joe?
Well, I think, that I agree with both these guys that you've got to be careful out there. And I think you are going to have this problem. It depends on what you're trying to do. I mean, if you're buying houses and you're looking for equity build for down the road, which is why most people buy houses, because they generally don't make a whole lot of rent by the time everything gets shaken out. If you're working in creative real estate, you have a lot of different methodologies in which you can operate. But I don't think anybody really knows, especially with this new group in DC. I don't think anybody really knows where we're going to be going here. My personal opinion is it's going to get worse for the renters. That's my personal, just based on my gut, really, because you have to wait and see what they do. But I don't think it's going to get tons and tons better.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's jump to the next one from our own United States real estate investor. California Palisades Inferno, a nightmare of fire, government failure, and financial collapse. Said it has devastated the state, destroying over 1,900 structures and causing $52 billion in damages. I read that and I thought, oh, that's got to be a lot more homes than that. And so I Googled it, and Wikipedia was saying it was actually 16,000 structures, which I don't know, maybe that's even low. But they did have to evacuate 200,000 according to Wikipedia. So it's interesting. What do you guys think? How do you think that's going to affect other markets, like people moving out of California or local? I'll comment too. Just well, no one's jumping in. I've got a friend, wealthy friend that lives in California, saw this go down, and he immediately called a hotel, and booked like 4 rooms for the next 3 months or something. And not to capitalize it, but to actually like give people that lost their homes a place to stay for free. Like he was going to cover it. So I thought that was amazing that he would do that. And that's very characteristic, a super caring, generous guy. It's definitely going to be putting pressure on some of those other places that people are going to have to go stay, right? So.
In California, one of the things in California I think you're going to see is you're going to see a building boom, obviously, but you're going to see contractors from all over the country. They're in their trucks, man. They're headed there now,
right,
because they've got to rebuild the place. So I think you're going to see a building. I think it's going to help the economy, to tell you the truth, because you're going to have a lot of activity going on for the next couple of years once you get through this mess that they're in right now. So. Overall, in my opinion, I think that it's going to be, I wouldn't call it a boom for California, but I would call it, you're going to have a kind of a building explosion, which is going to bring a lot of jobs, going to bring contractors from all over the country down there, because there's a lot they got to do quickly. And they're going to need everybody they can get in order to do it. And they certainly don't have enough just in California to tackle the problem that they got going on down there now. So I think there's some positives there for the state, actually.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting time. you take a state, for example, like Florida, they get hurricanes every year. Like, it doesn't surprise them. They're well prepared. They do what they need to do, and they carry on, and people keep coming back. Just let's face it, the ocean will always sell. But then we had what happened, like, and I'm in the Southeast, so, Helene missed where I was by not very much. But we saw the devastation. I pull it up on Google. It said 73,000 homes were either damaged or destroyed. Right. So, that's a lot of damage. But it was unprecedented because, they said they've never had, I think it was something like 40 trillion gallons of water. And all of a sudden it's a big mess. Right. And so that's going to take time. And now this happens in California. And I think what we're going to see is, there's certainly no stranger to the idea of massive storm happens and like he was just saying that now a bunch of contractors are going there, right? Like that happens. But I think it's going to be interesting because I think maybe as a country, there's probably a lot of building departments saying, maybe we need to tighten up things a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised to see building codes get more stringent to really make sure, because now you've got a bunch of construction in multiple parts of the country. And now it's a new year. We'll have another tornado season here in the southeast coming soon, followed by another hurricane, right? And it's going to keep going. So, I almost wonder if we're just going to see a general tightening up of building codes to really make sure that when all these booms are happening, like Joe was saying, because there's going to be multiple of them, that we're going back with better product. Now, the thing is, better product means the codes might be tighter, but we got to balance that because, right, they don't want so much regulation and red tape because that slows things down. And better usually means more expensive. Mm-hmm. So, and I know one of the debates is, well, let's rebuild California, or you could replace California, North Carolina, wherever. But can the people actually afford it, right? So there's multiple issues here. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this ultimately shakes out. But ultimately, I think we're going to see better construction coming out of it. But there has to be balance somehow with cost and regulation. And it's just going to be interesting. And with California, it's a little bit different because, North Carolina, they weren't ready, but they had never seen anything like it. The wildfire then is not new to California. So you have two contrasting issues. So they've got that issue to deal with as well. So there's just a lot of variables involved with this. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
I think Frank is right on the money with the codes. Most definitely you're going to see. I mean, in Florida, after the hurricanes, they're always up in their codes. And they are indeed building houses now that can withstand some of this stuff. Yeah. They're going to probably start building houses, not fireproof, but, that tend not to burn so easily. But I think the big thing is where they put the houses. Okay. If you looked at the films on the news, I mean, some of these houses shouldn't have been where they were. I mean, it didn't take a genius to figure that out. Okay. And I think that one of the things that's going to change in California is going to be the zoning, where you can put these houses, because they're in the middle of fire zones. Okay. They're on the beaches where they can have slides. I mean, they're in the hills where they're going to have mudslides. So I think it's going to, out of the tragedy, I think it's going to come some good stuff. As far as the cost, well, you're in California. I mean, my example, my nephew just sold his house. He bought it for $700,000. He just sold it for $2.8 million. Ooh. And if you had transported that house here to Philly, in the burbs where I am, it'd probably be worth, I don't know, maybe $300,000-400,000. So you are in California, and people that live in California, they kind of know what they got to pay. It's just, it's the way it is. But I do think very positive things are going to come out of it, in particular where you put those properties, because a lot of them burned down, shouldn't have really been where they were, if you follow what I'm saying. They're right in the middle of a fire field.
Yeah, high density. I remember seeing some clip. It was from Joe Rogan interviewing. He was talking about interviewing a fireman. He's like, the fireman said, "It's coming. It's going to be bad. It's just it's all set up to just burn and keep going." So it happened, like the guy said. So, but like, yeah, to your point there about the building codes, I saw a video where a guy was standing in front of his house that didn't get burned. Everywhere around him, just ashes, and he was pointing out like the materials they used and the design actually, like, so that embers couldn't like land and just sit and keep burning. That kind of thought process was going on when he built that, and it saved him. And Antonio put in the comments too that Tom Hanks' all concrete home didn't burn, and he had sprinklers on the roof. Of course, you got to have water to it. I saw another thing in the news. It was talking about, people were saying, fire hydrants didn't have water. And there's maybe some misconceptions about how that water's fed. Something about like plastic things that would actually melt, and that was the failure. They actually had water, but until those parts failed. So anyway.
Well, you'll see, and that'll be another plus that'll come out. And I agree with Joe. There's going to be some positives. You're going to have newer construction. There's going to be just better products put back, just because of technological improvements and the better codes. But you'll probably see an improvement in infrastructure. You'll probably see an improvement in process. I mean, anytime events like this happen, it's unfortunate that it happens, and certainly not something I could relate to. But, history has shown that, we are resilient and we come back with something better. So, and it will come back. All those areas will come back, and they'll come back better, and we'll learn from them and hopefully continue to be better at preparing for the next, potential threat, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Well, Frank, it's like anything else. You go to a lot of different states, depending upon their zoning codes. You find people getting permission to build homes in floodplains. I mean, it don't make no sense. And then it gets flooded out every couple of years, and all of a sudden somebody figures out, oh, wait a minute, you can't have a house here. It floods out. So I agree with you. I mean, out of the disaster, hopefully will come some common sense.
Let's go to the next one from Benzinga. I always want to say Bazinga. It messes with me. Real estate.
I watched that show myself.
Oh, great show. Yeah. Real estate investing forecast for the next 5 years. So they talked about remote work, housing shortages driving prices, demographic shifts with millennials buying homes and boomers downsizing. Cap rates, it really dove into a lot. And I know we've touched on this a little bit so far, but any extra comments on what you guys are seeing in the next 5 years?
Oh, wow.
Big topic, right?
Well, I was looking at the list that it gives here in the article.
Yeah.
And certainly all those things are good, quality reasons and factors to keep aware of. The one thing I didn't see mentioned, though, is as people, we like what we like. And what do we like? We all place a higher value on what? Waterfront, for example. Like whether we want oceanfront or lakefront, we all instinctively know that's worth more. We have lakes where I'm at. We also have a lot of mountains. We all know that no matter what's happening in the world, if I got a house with a view of a mountain range, that's going to have more value. For some people, it's here's something with peace and quiet. Maybe it's an area with acreage. So I think with all the factors it talks about, let's not forget that we're still people buying these houses. And we all know, especially if we're investing in real estate, we know what people like. And even if we're not investing in real estate, we know the things at the end of the day that people really like, that always seem to pull more value. And so, investing in areas that are in those types of places generally have a higher chance of pulling a higher value because that's what they've always historically done. And that's probably not going to change, at least not in the foreseeable future, maybe ever, right? Like beachfront property, for example. The beach is probably not going out of style anytime soon, maybe ever. So it's super important to know your market. Every market is different.
Mm-hmm.
What are the drivers in that market? But just don't forget the basics of just human behavior. We know what people ultimately are willing to pay more for, and maybe those are the areas. And and the last example, maybe if you're like wholesale deals to investors, for example, you're just going to be a wholesaler, which is great. Where are you going to go? You might not think of anything I just said, just where all the investors buying, right? Right, because that's what you do. So. Just get the market. Don't fight the market is what I'm ultimately saying. Don't fight the market. The market is usually pretty clear on what it's going to reward. Go with it.
Yeah. So I guess the better question, like for us and anybody watching, is like, what are we doing? What shifts are we making now in our business? What are we seeing? Where the opportunities are, and where they've dried up, right? So,
well, I'll tell you, I've been in this business 50 years. I've been around since 1971. I've seen pretty much every crazy adjustment in the market, 2008, I can name years of them. And for investors like us, people always ask me, well, what are you going to do in the buyer's market when they're giving them away? Or in a seller's market when they're giving them away? Buyer's market when you can come in and name your price. How do you make money when our sellers are in control? And everybody's worried about the market. I never worried about the market. As an investor now, I'm speaking as an investor. I found that people always needed my service. Okay. There may be less of them in, let's say, a seller's market, okay, but they're always out there. And the key to it, for those of you that are investing out there and worried about seller markets and buyer markets and so forth, I always just up my marketing. And that always cured the problem, simply because there's always people that are getting laid off. There's always people that sold their old house, can't, or bought a new one, can't get rid of the old one, getting divorced. All the reasons out there. There's zillions of them. And the cure to it, okay, you do what the market allows you to do, but what you have to do is expand your exposure in the market, and then you'll find your people, or they'll find you. So I never worry about it. All these guys that predict this is going to be bad, this is going to be good, this is going to. First of all, I don't think they know what they're talking about most of the time, unless they're Karnak the Magnificent or something. And the cure is pretty simple, at least for me, in that I just up my marketing and talk to more people. And you're going to run into people that, as Frank said, we help people. That's what we do. We're not realtors. We help. We come out and actually help them solve their problem. And they're always out there. I mean, it's just impossible not to run into these people. So for the investors out there, the cure to any market is just up your, for me at any rate, it always worked. I just up my marketing and I always find them. They're always there.
That's great. Brian, you mentioned getting into sub 2. Anything else? Or how are you going to actually implement that?
My plan for the next 5 years is, because I think the market's going to continue to pull back a little bit before it starts to rise again, just because it's been going up for so long. But my plan is to focus on areas outside of the big cities, because I think the competition in the big cities is just going to keep getting worse and worse. So what I'm going to do is focus on areas that there's not as much competition, but you can still find a house. Like I was talking to a cash buyer yesterday. He's looking for houses in Northwest Kansas. He wants a house that he can get for under $35,000 that he can rent out for $1,000 a month. So I'm going to continue to do reverse wholesaling and keep talking to my cash buyers, keep talking to the sellers to see what the people in the marketplace actually need and what they're looking for, and how to best fulfill their needs.
Yeah, good. Yeah, we're looking at maybe taking over a portfolio of lease option deals out there in Kansas as well. And,
oh, nice.
Yeah, one of our associate, I guess, somebody else doing the same kind of model of lease options we do. He was finding it was just hard in Colorado, as you know. So Kansas is pretty close and is a good market for that. So,
to piggyback off of what you just said and what Brian was saying, you will see a trend, I think. I'm not to say you will, can't guarantee anything, but I think we're going to see a trend of more and more people looking at remote investing because of just the technological options available to us. It's never been easier. When I started this business, the idea of buying a property in North Carolina, for example, even though it's 4 hours away from me, maybe 3 hours, depending on where I go, I'm like, well, that's too far. Well, now 3 hours is like, that's nothing, right? We're looking across the country like it's no big deal, because with the resources and tech available to us, we can make sound decisions without even having to get in the car. Now, there's no substitute for boots on the ground. Looked at a deal actually just before this call, boots on the ground deal, works, checked out, but I did my due diligence over FaceTime. So, but as a builder developer, it's almost like remote control person, right? Do this, move the camera, and you can do these things. We can do that, even a few years ago. So I think we're going to see a bigger trend toward the person Brian was talking about. Hey, I want to get a house for $35,000. Like, if you come to Atlanta, that ain't happening, period. That's just not going to happen. And if it does happen, it's a rare unicorn. But there's lots of markets where it can happen. And it's never been easier to say, you know what, I only got a limited amount of resources. I really want to invest. Great. Go to the market, do the research, learn about it, and make some things happen. So I think we'll see more of that in the coming years. Yeah.
Every wholesaler I know based here in Colorado, has come to the conclusion that they need to go into other markets. So they'll still do their marketing here, but they add in some other, Midwest market or Texas, just because they're better markets. And to your point, things have changed. Like, I'd recommend anybody wanting to do anything remote, read David Green's book. It's Bigger Pockets book, remote real estate investing for long distance real estate investing. Good book, really good fundamentals in there. But that was written before they've got things like the Kubicasa app, where you can go through and it'll scan it. It'll create like a 3D rendering for like the upper level paid thing, but it'll for free create a floor plan if it's under 3,000 square feet, things like that. And like in the comments, the Meta Ray-Ban glasses could help. I don't know what that does, but yeah, there's some really cool tools out there that we can use. But again, Frank,
one of the things, James, that might be helpful for people out there is that there's a program that I created that I have in my website called the Ultimate Automated Deal Machine. And that revolves around working with wholesalers. And this allows you to work anywhere in the country for a simple reason. Wholesalers, having been one a while ago, are in general, okay, not Brian, I think it's Brian if I have the name right. Wholesalers tend to just concentrate on wholesaling. That's what they do.
Yeah.
And I would say 80% of them really don't do anything else. And what happens is that they get a lot of leads that they can't work with because there's not enough equity in the property to make a deal work, or the seller won't take their low offer. It's very common.
Yeah.
So what my program does is it teaches people, investors, how to get to these wholesalers, how to talk with them, find them, get to them, talk to them, and joint venture deals with them that they can't do. Because when I was a wholesaler, I put ads in the paper, and I get $300,000-400,000 homes, because you're not saying in the ad I'm looking for jumpers. I buy houses, so you get all kind of people. And as I say, there's a lot of reasons why wholesalers can't deal with them in a wholesale deal. However, they will lend themselves to subject to or on the financing or lease options or whatever. So you become what I call a transaction engineer, which is what we teach people to do in our mentoring program. And you can get with these wholesalers, okay? They've already done all the work. They've got all the information on the property. They get you joint venture the deal with them. They're your boots on the ground. They're right there. You don't have to worry about that, okay? And you put the deal together, and they're going to do whatever it is you need them to do on the ground. So, yeah, we've got tons of ways in which to work with these people, as Brian said. This is one where it's not technology, which I kind of like, because me and computers, if I didn't have a brother-in-law who was an electrical engineer, I'd have trouble turning the damn thing on. So, I'm not great on that kind of stuff. But I don't have a problem talking to wholesalers, in Michigan or in New Mexico or whatever, and me being in Philly, putting a deal together. They do the running around. They already have all the information that I need, and I put the deal together. So that's one tip for people out there that want to do it virtually, because I agree with Frank. If it isn't a big thing, which I think it is, it will be a big thing. And the other beauty of it is, for investors, you never run out of people to talk to. It's impossible, okay? Because I don't care what city you're in, it's finite. Even if you're in Philly where there's thousands and thousands of homes, it's still finite, okay? No matter what you do. And you got a lot of people here all going after the same stuff. So being able to have the entire country as a place to market is, I think, a pretty good plus.
Yeah, and that's the hardest thing about virtual wholesaling, is getting your boots on the ground to actually go look at the properties. Because it's one thing for somebody to send you pictures of their property, but then the challenging thing is to go from just talking over the phone or text to like showing up in person and building the relationship. So having those boots on the ground is critical to the virtual wholesaling, because your conversion rates go way down when you try to wholesale virtually.
You're right on it, Brian. Absolutely.
Yep. Video is so much better than photos, but even then, you still need those boots on the ground to give you some good feedback, right? There's somebody you can trust.
The only time that I don't need boots on the ground is if I'm doing a wholesale lease option, because what happens is that I'm going to get pictures from them and so forth, assuming that they're somewhat. If I didn't get them off the MLS, if he wasn't trying to sell on the MLS and couldn't do it, if they're taking the pictures, I'm assuming that they're now. Okay. Now, have I ever gotten old pictures, okay, of a house that don't look that way anymore? Yeah. And what happens is that when the tenant buyer goes in there, and if the place looks like a bomb went off in it, and he sent me bad, pictures that were lies, I find out real fast, okay, what's going on, because the tenant buyer is going to tell me. All right. So even when you don't have boots on the ground, because I don't really use them when I do wholesale lease options, I don't really need them. Sandwich lease options I do. But even when you're doing a wholesale lease option, you're going to find out pretty fast if you got lied to. And it's happened to me like once or twice, but generally speaking, the homeowners, they're looking for help, so they tend to be, pretty straight with you.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, there's so much more we could talk about. Well, hey guys, let's take a break, hear from our sponsor, and then we'll get back to it.
Attention investors. Are you happy with your current returns? Would you be interested in a safe, secure, low-risk, high-return investment in real estate? And what if you never had to deal with another rehab, bad tenant, or lousy property manager? Introducing an innovative investing approach that gives new and sophisticated investors a higher ROI with more protection than traditional methods. We've created a blue ocean investing strategy by combining the tried and true models of fix and flip with buy and hold, and have found a way to keep the benefits of both while eliminating the drawbacks. Hybrid real estate investing is a better way to invest that allows busy professionals to replace their salary, build passive wealth, reap huge tax benefits, and fund their retirement with income-producing real estate without the usual risks and headaches. HybridRealEstateInvesting.com, the best risk-adjusted returns in single-family real estate.
All right. So just that last ad, that was Hybrid Real Estate Investing. That's our brand, our rent-to-own investing platform. So if you're interested in that, just go to hybridrealestateinvesting.com and we can explain more about that. All right, let's get back to it. From the New York Post, LA renters concerned over hikes as wildfires squeeze California's already tight rental market. So I just highlighted a thing from that article. So they're accusing investors of price gouging, which the same thing happened when Maui burned. So, investors are always looking for opportunities, of course. So I guess my question was, how do they control that? How do they, what is gouging? How do they track that and stop it, whatever that looks like, right? It's an open market is my thought is like, you can offer somebody some low ball offer on a burned out property, but they don't have to take it, right? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I think the theory is that you get what the market can bear.
Yep.
So if you're going to gouge, you're going to gouge. I think one of you guys just said you get stopped if the people, put the kibosh on it. I can't afford this. It's not going to happen. I think they just, they gouge until they see they can't get it, and then they come back down a little bit until they find the price that they can get. I don't think it's a good thing personally. But look, it's capitalism. It's the way it works.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you can. I think it's tough to legislate out, to tell you the truth. So yeah. I don't know how you handle it.
I was actually confusing this article with that other one, or maybe one coming up. So they're actually in this article talking about rent hikes, because these people are going to have to go rent somewhere, right? So that I could see that, like my friend bought a block of, or rented out a block that he's just going to give away. Other landlords maybe jacking up their prices, but it also mentioned in there that the California's Tenant Protection Act limits annual rent increases of 10% or less. So there is a stopgap, built in already, I guess.
Well, sort of, but your initial rent is going to be your initial rent. So if that's high, if that's a gouge, that right. 10% don't really mean all that much because you already got them when they moved in.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You were here. I'm sorry.
No. Whoever was jumped in there, was that you, Frank? Go ahead.
Oh, well, it's a situation where California already has laws in place for this. And the article talks about, hey, there's laws already in place for this, and there's people that are explicitly breaking the law. So, right, like if they're breaking the law, they're breaking the law. And, are they going to be held accountable for it? I mean, I don't know. Maybe not. We don't know. But if people are going to do what people do, right? There's always people that, there's a capitalism argument, right? That the markets to do what they're to do. But then when something like this happens, right, there's people that unfortunately are going to try to exploit it for personal gain at others' expense, which is unfortunate, but it's human nature, right? So, and that's not something that's going to change because of one event or another event. As long as there's people, this is always going to be some kind of challenge. So the question to me is, where's that balance between, because if the demand is up, the demand is up, right? I'm not advocating that people should pay more. I'm not advocating that at all. But capitalism, the markets are going to do what they're going to do. But we also want to balance that with, right? Don't be like taking advantage of people and that sort of thing. I think it's difficult to balance that out because, they got to figure that out in California, and they've already tried to figure it out because there's laws in place, but they're being ignored. Well, are they going to be enforced, right? So, but if you took that exact same problem and you put it in another state, it might get handled differently. Or what if it was in a mountain range, or what if it's in the middle of the plains, in the middle part of the country, right? So I think a lot of times these challenges are, it's easy to say, well, here's a broad stroke on what we should do, but the reality is everywhere is different. The demographics are different. People have different tolerances for things, right? So it's just, there is no one size fits all solution, is my thought on it. And it's not an easy problem to solve, to balance out. Because if you overregulate it, right, then people are going to rebel and they're going to find workarounds, or it might hurt the market, right? But if you don't do anything, then it might be too free for all. I mean, it's a tough question to answer. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. And even in a state like California, we're talking about LA, where this wildfire event happened. But what if you go to the countryside, which is a different type of demographic clientele than the LA area? And I'm speaking incredibly generally, of course, but right, like they might have a different feeling, right, in some of the more quieter parts of California than they do in a very dense area. I'm not an expert, I don't know, but there's just no one size fits all. But hopefully,
you're right, Frank. But you're right, Frank, because like I said, my nephew lived in Marin. But you go upstate towards Sacramento and further up north, it's like not even California. I mean, it's houses are reasonable and so forth and so on. You come down into the Bay Area, you better look out. I mean, you want to live there, you better have some money. I mean, that's just the way it is. Okay. As far as I saw, so you're exactly right. You go to different parts of that state, it's like not being in the state anymore. I mean, if you're used to being around Marin County and San Francisco and all that kind of stuff, or LA, parts of LA, obviously. But you get up north, it's it's more like Oregon. It's more like, it's reasonable to live up there.
And that's the beauty of having local laws. You've got state laws, but maybe and so to your point, as you were sharing, Joe, maybe this is an issue that's highlighting the need for more emphasis on local law over state law.
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
So, that's because local laws are going to be the best laws for your locale. That's why they're there. And maybe there needs to be more emphasis put there rather than, what the governor's doing across the state. Because he's got, and whether you like or don't like him is irrelevant. The point is, most governors in the country, they're governing such a wide variety of markets.
Right, exactly.
And you just do a swift stroke. Yeah, it might work for here, but it might be a really bad deal for another part of the state. Now you have a bunch of people hate you because you generalize some that should not be generalized.
You're 100% right. 100%.
That's why you gotta have thick skin to be in politics, because somebody or maybe a lot of people are gonna hate you, and some people are gonna love you. So,
let the locals do their thing. They're going to be the best equipped. I think most people would agree with that sentiment.
Man, our landlord-tenant laws are really shifting here, kind of following suit with the kind of tough California laws, which make it hard for investors. So,
well, I think, James, you're going to see in any, I like I said, I've been in business a long. I ran 2,000. Some apartment complexes over 2,000 units, and I can tell you from going to court it's always going to be in the tenant's favor, always. You know what I mean? Unless they did something really egregious. Okay.
Yeah, we're big bad landlords, right?
Pardon me?
We're big bad evil landlords.
Yeah. So I've found that, it's the judges, at least that I ran into for years, are always geared towards the tenant buyer, the tenants first.
Yeah.
Now, if they're, obviously in the wrong and so forth and so on, they'll, but even when they didn't pay their rent, they would give them, easy ways out and so forth, or the landlord wants their money, you know what I mean? But you got to wait and so forth. So I think in all here, at any rate, it's pretty much tenant friendly. I don't know about other states, but I can tell you here it is.
Yeah. Let's go to the next article from Newsweek. Back to California, Gavin Newsom cracks down on predatory wildfire investors. So this is the article I was kind of thinking we were talking about. So said the order forbids unsolicited lowball offers for properties in affected areas for 3 months, which is, again, modeled after similar actions they took in Maui. So.
Well, but I'm a little slow. I don't understand why 3 months would deter low offers after 3 months.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, how does that, I probably don't understand it, but do people come in the first 3 months and it's guaranteed they're going to make low off? They're required to make low offers or something? I mean, if the numbers don't work, what are you going to make a low offer for? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And if it's burned to the ground, like, what is there to buy besides, I guess, the land? But it's the insurance companies are all tied up in this. I don't really know how that all works out. I've got friends that lost homes in the Marshall fire here in Colorado. They were tied up in battles with the insurance companies for a long time. So, you guys know how that all works with investors making offers?
Well, it says here in the order, according to the article, to purchase or otherwise acquire any interest in the real estate property for an amount less than the fair market value of the property or interest on the property on the day. But the problem is, if the whole place burned down, what is the fair, like, let's say you pay fair market value on January 6th. Okay, and whatever that is, let's just pick a random number, 500,000. I don't know. That's probably low for over there, but let's just, for the sake of an example, let's say someone says, well, it was worth 500 grand. Okay, well, you can buy it for 500 grand, and the seller's like, no problem. It's fair market value. We're good. Everyone's happy. It complies with the order. But what if they decide, because of reasons, maybe there's, like Joe was talking about earlier, that it's going to be 2-3 years before anything happens. Like, is that really worth 500,000? Like, because, right? Like, and I think that's the problem when you get into this. The sentiment makes sense. You don't want people being gouged, but at the same time, you're trying to, again, control what capitalism, what the fair markets are going to do. And how do you define fair market value when the entire community is gone?
Yep.
Right. Like, and I'm not saying the community of, for example, the most notable one, the Pacific Palisades, we're not saying it's going to go down. It may not go down. But what if fair market value goes up? What if they make a proposal in a month and they say, oh, well, they're going to do da-da-da-da-da, and it's going to be this amazing thing that's 3 times better than what it is? Well, now did it go from 500 to $1 million to 1.5? Like, did it go up in value now because people can put plans out to say what's coming and what happens. Development cost goes up, everything goes up, but that doesn't even mean it's going to be built that way. It could change. It might take years. Who knows? So I get the sentiment of the order, but I think it's tough when you're talking about fair market value, when you're talking about large areas like this. I mean, it's tough enough on a single property sometimes, much less an entire community.
Well, I agree with you, Frank, except for the fact that you're saying fair market value, but on what? The insurance company is going to pay off the house, hopefully. Okay. So they'll get reimbursed for the house, hopefully. But most of them are burned down. So on some that's burned down, you're buying ground. So why would I want to pay what the guy paid for the house or with the fair market value of a house when there ain't no house there? There's only ground there. Okay. I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I wouldn't want to do that as an investor. Okay. What's the fair market of the ground? I'll pay a little premium on that. I got no problem with that. Well, I don't want to pay $500,000 on the house when 100, the ground was worth 150. I'm just picking numbers, 150,000, and the rest was the house. And the insurance company is going to give you the money for the house. And if I do that, then my numbers are going to go way up for me to make a profit. So what was 500,000 is now going to be maybe 700,000 by the time I purchase the ground and have to rebuild and so forth. Does that make any sense?
Well,
I don't know how they figure that.
To piggyback off of that, what I would say is, what if the insurance, like, is that fair market value still that? If you're like, okay, I'll pay that. Oh, by the way, you can't get insurance there.
Oh, yeah, right. Now you got a problem.
Yeah. Like let's pause California. That's a real thing in Florida, right? There are places where it's just hard to get insurance. Now you're like, but it's valuable. People want it. Yeah, but you just got hit by a hurricane twice in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So you might think it's worth that. The capital market might say it's worth that, but your insurer might have a different opinion, and that's going to impact really what you're going to be able to think it's worth. Because unless you have the pockets to self-insure, that could be a problem.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's tough. It's a tough road to hoe. Okay, trying to figure out the values of things when you have disaster areas. It's just, I think eventually, Frank, the market's going to decide what it's going to be anyway. It's what's somebody willing to pay for something. It's as simple as that. And the numbers will dictate that. But all of these laws, like you're talking about, how can you figure all this stuff? You don't know like you said, you don't know what the insurance company is going to do. So again, I think their view of gouging and so forth. Okay, I'm sure is legitimate, but the market is going to determine what's going to happen. I mean, short term, they're going to gouge probably. See what they can get until somebody stops them somehow. But the market eventually, I mean, people can only pay what people can pay for, be it investors or buyers or whatever. So it's a tough thing to regulate.
Well, and maybe the focus isn't so much the value. It's easy for us to focus on it, right? Because we're investors. But maybe it's those last few words where it says is forbidden for 3 months from January 14th. So maybe and I don't know. I can't read the governor's mind. I don't know, but maybe maybe the focus isn't that the value is as much as just, hey, leave these people alone for 3 months. And maybe that's the goal. Maybe that's the primary goal. I don't know, right? But that's a possibility where it's like, hey, we know what you investor people are going to do. We know we can't control what sellers are going to do, but can we just pipe down for 3 months?
I think you're right. Because the investors ain't going to do much for 3 months anyway. Okay, because they're not going to pay the exorbitant prices.
Yeah, they're going to want to see things shake out, generally speaking.
Yeah, they're going to wait 3 months anyhow.
I got stalled out there with my internet for some reason, but one thing in my mind, I'm thinking some of these homes may be free and clear, obviously some will be, but then others have loans on them, right? So there's lenders involved, want to get their money back. Then there's the insurance. So there's that whole factor of where lender wants to get their money back out, but there's no any appreciation or equity in there. They don't care about that. They just want to get paid out. And of course, I don't know if there's any room for that. Like if it's burned to the ground, there's no equity, right? Like it's just whatever's owed.
And plus the fact, if you've been watching the news, a lot of these poor people had their insurance canceled like 2 days before the fire. If you've been watching the news, it's ridiculous. So what do you do now? Now what's fair value? The poor guy got no insurance, so he's not getting any money for the house. The ground's only worth X amount of dollars, and no investor is going to pay for a house that ain't there. So, it's a mess. What they're trying. What do you do?
Yeah, it's definitely highlighted the issue of insurance. Like for example, we do business in Florida, and of course, we all know Florida gets hit by hurricanes, and they don't want to cover roof insurance. They don't want to cover the roof. Now, here's the thing: they will cover it. Like a lot of providers will allow you to get coverage for your roof. The problem is the extra you pay for it, the premium just for the roof, you're basically on your average, let's call it 1,500, 2,000 square foot home. If you pay for that wind coverage, you're buying a new roof every 2 years. Mm. So it doesn't make sense unless you have a very specific scenario to justify that premium. Because it's something like, I don't know, the last one I saw was like $800 a month. Like $800 a month in 2 years, I paid for the roof. And that's an expensive roof because roofing, you have to have permits in Florida to pull a roof, and the restrictions are higher. So it costs more to put that exact same roof there than it does where I am in Atlanta. So it's going to be interesting to see how the insurance piece of these disasters, because again, Florida's used to it, right? Like they know this game. This is not a new game, but North Carolina with the hurricanes, huge shift there. California, you got the wildfire thing, a known issue, but there's going to be a lot of debate on whether they were prepared and all. It's a whole nother conversation. How does insurance play into this? And I think that's going to become a bit of a national conversation, right? Because now you got people in other markets that haven't been hit by something, and they're like, right, like if I'm in the middle of the country, Oklahoma, for example, I get these crazy F5 tornadoes every few years, it seems, wipes out half the city, or that plenty of documentaries on that, right? But how do they handle this? Maybe the answer to this is, hey, there's other parts of the country that have dealt with things that they know are coming, right? Florida's made their decisions on how they handle. I'm sure the Midwest has made decisions. And, I think the insurance is going to be a big piece to keep focus on, because at the end of the day, regardless of what happens, it's the biggest investment people make for most people is their home. Mm-hmm. Or for us as investors, supplemental properties that we own, the insurance is critical. We got to get that one right.
Yeah, I just got a quote from Progressive. They wanted $13,000 for 1 year on a manufactured home in southern Colorado, and more people are just going without insurance and taking the gamble, because it's like gambling at the casino. You're like, well, if I'll just maybe I'll just cancel my policy because the rates are getting so astronomically high that it's almost worth taking the gamble of just leaving it off until a disaster happens. So something's going to have to happen to counterbalance the skyrocketing rates with people not willing to take the risk of leaving their policies lapsed.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's jump to the next article from Realtor.com. Wall Street thinks U.S. home prices are overpriced. Duh.
You is. You think?
Glad they figured that out. That's good. Better late than never, right? So,
Yeah, let's see.
I think we all know this. We're investors here. We know this. We know the party has to shift at some point, and the only question is when. It's just the history of economics. What I thought was interesting about this article was they were talked about these hedge fund buyers. They called the terminology they used was Wall Street landlords.
Yeah.
So, and maybe REITs are thrown in there. I don't know, but it was interesting how they were figuring out that properties were overvalued by something like 20-25%.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a very fascinating number. And I almost wonder if a day is going to come where the government steps in and says, you know what, hey, hedge fund, Wall Street, we're going to put a cap on how much stuff you can buy. We need more people to just be able to afford real estate again. Because affordability is a problem. It's not getting better. Construction costs are like crazy high. I was just talking to a friend in Tennessee literally a couple days ago, and I was like, hey, what's the cost in Tennessee? And he was telling me, I'm like, oh, it's just as expensive there as it is where I am. And then, of course, I know people in California, speaking of California, right, and they have really high costs. At some point, this idea of affordability has got to be hit. And I just got to wonder if at some point they're going to tell the institutional buyers, you know what, we're going to cap that. We just need more people to own their own home again, and they need to be able to afford it.
I know there's talk of it, but problem is all these decision makers are in the government, are in the markets, and probably into some of these too. So
yeah.
Time will tell. Yeah. It was interesting in the rent-own space. So Home Partners of America and Divvy, two of the huge, Wall Street-backed companies. BlackRock was behind Home Partners. Both of them just pulled out of the market. And I know they're selling off multiple homes that didn't get bought by rent-to-own buyers here in the Denver market. And they're finding like what we are. It's hard to cash flow some of these properties that were high priced, and then the purchase prices they had for their end buyers, which were much higher than what they bought them at. Just the market dropped out, so they're not able to. Those buyers aren't able to go get a loan and buy them out, and so they're in that situation. So they're just selling off, kind of fire sailing stuff, keeping some properties where they actually have tenants in them, keeping them for now and managing them, but they're not buying. But they're saying they're pulling completely out of the market, like shutting their doors, which is weird to me because in the past, since I've been in rent to own, I've seen them kind of put different markets on pause, or depending on what the market's doing. Even nationwide, they'll kind of pull back or jump back in. But actually shutting down their doors is pretty interesting to me. But yeah, they're an institutional buyer that's letting the market dictate what they're doing. Be interesting to see, like this article, if the government's ever going to jump in and kind of put their thumb on those big companies like that. So,
well, I think, James, when it comes down to it, the market's always going to dictate what's going to happen. I mean, the government can do whatever they want to do, but eventually the market is going to do what it's going to do. You're either going to go with it or you ain't. Because the more legislation you throw into this stuff, the more screwed up it gets. Because there's so many different people being affected by this legislation. If it's bad for this guy, good for this guy, who knows? So I think you're right. I mean, I think the market's always will determine what's going to happen one way or the other.
Yeah. There's a comment in the chat that says apparently most investment real estate is owned by mom and pop investors rather than institutional investors. And that's true. I've seen numbers where it is a pretty small portion. But there's articles that are always coming out saying that they're taking over.
And that is true. I think the last number I saw was institutional investors own something like 10 to 11%. So it was the minority. The problem is it's a very visual minority.
Yeah.
It's very like yes, there's a lot more mom and pop, but most mom and pop, you don't even know who they are, right? And I mean, just think of all the people that move from one house to another, and they decide not to sell. They'll just rent their old house.
Right. They're not on the NASDAQ, right?
But they're just renting their old house, right? So,
yeah.
But technically, they're an investor because they're a landlord because they own one rental property. There's probably millions of those. But these hedge funds are so visual. They come in, they make all these moves, they have all the signs in the yards, right? They have the websites, the fancy advertising. So they kind of become like the big, I don't know if target's the right word, but a key point of visual reference that gives that perception. And guess what? We all know the phrase perception's reality, right?
But the other thing, Frank, is that when they come into an area, if they're buying up a lot in certain areas, they're making the market. Okay, so you got to keep that in mind too. I mean, they're making the market. They want higher prices. Guess what? Market just went up in this area because they have, so much there that they can actually create their own market, which is, I don't think, a good thing, but that's what they can do.
No, I would agree. And then all the wholesalers come in, and now the wholesalers don't want to sell the mom and pop because big boy investor will pay more.
Mm-hmm.
I remember getting an email. This was probably a couple years ago now. So the inflation had just gone up, and I got an email from a wholesaler, and he said he's like, well, now, and I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, now that the hedge funds are pulled back a lot, we would like to take the time to make more relationships with you. We'll call me the mom and pop investor. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was such a telling email because I thought to myself, that should have been going the whole time, not just because the big institutional guys that pay crazy prices are now not paying crazy prices. Even those people have figured out, and I thought it was interesting because the article alluded to this, where some of these institutional people are even looking at some of their investments and going, you know what, maybe we paid too much for that. And all the mom and pop people are screaming, you're paying too much. It's not worth it. But to Joe's point, and certainly it was the case in Atlanta, they created a market that basically didn't exist prior, but now has rippling effects that are still impacting us today.
It's interesting when you have a huge fund behind you, and we've looked into that because we've raised money for multifamily deals and stuff where, it's basically a fund for one property, but also thinking like, hey, we're mom and pop rent to own investors, and we're battling against these big guys that have a fund where they can just go pay cash. Maybe they turn around and put financing on it down the road, but they've just got this big pool of money. And I think whoever's making decisions, they probably get a little overzealous because they just have this big pool and they're not making the best decisions where, us as mom and pop people, we have to really look at our numbers because it's just onesie, twosie deals. And we got to be conservative where they're kind of like, woohoo, like we got this big pool of money. I think that's the problem with any kind of fund, right? So
I'm sure we all remember the Zillow article from a few years ago that they publicized. Their goal was to make, it was like 1.5% to 2% per deal. They put it right out. You could probably Google it now, I imagine. But I remember reading that article thinking Frank can't run a business off of 1.5% to 2% margin. Fast forward a few years, Zillow home buyers, they're gone.
Yep.
Right, they're gone, right? but Zillow's an authority, so that Zillow itself will be okay. But that particular experiment they tried, didn't end so well.
Yeah. I don't know any investors that would invest in Zillow if the reality for their return was 1 or 2%.
Yeah, I don't know. It was a crazy time, and we've heard of then the iBuyer rage began, right?
Yeah.
We got all that, and then Open Door, of course, a lot of people heard of them across the country, and I won't complain too much. Open Door bought a house one of my family members owned. I couldn't believe they paid what they paid, and they did. They bought it, and I was just like, okay, it didn't make sense, but okay. I don't know what they did with it, but
I saw the same thing. Yeah, and they'd come in and do like these lipstick fixes. We actually got an offer from them on one of our properties that needs a bunch of work. $60,000 worth of work for sure, like minimum. And they put in their offer that they one line item to fix it up was $5,000. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, it's like it didn't make sense. We just, knowing what I know about them, I thought it might be a real deal, but we're also cautious of, we call it the lock and drop, to get you under contract, and then you're under the gun maybe to go find your next house, and then you're waiting for that inspection to come back and that objection, and they do their job. Oh, we can't pay that price, and they put these sellers in a bad spot. But like you said, Frank, I've seen it go through where they just did pay more, and the sellers okay, well, that's fine with me. So I don't know.
Yes, interesting world. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the next article from Multifamily Dive. FTC sues Greystar over alleged falsely advertised rent prices. So I guess this was in Colorado. FTC in Colorado have filed lawsuit against Greystar. They're the nation's largest landlord. Said they claim Greystar concealed mandatory fees such as valet trash, utilities, and verification fees. So they were.
What's valet trash?
I don't know. I saw that one.
I mean, what is that? I want to know what that is.
I know. I love that you caught that. Yeah, what the hell? Sounds like maybe some higher end rentals. Anyway, of course, they're defending it, saying there's no wrongdoing. Yeah, I guess it said it's hidden in fine print or revealed after lease agreements were signed, leaving renters without the option to get out. Of course, yeah, they say there's no wrongdoing, defending its practice of advertising based rent as an industry standard. So I don't know. Any comments, or should we just go to the next one?
I just don't know why, if you're the largest landlord, or any landlord really, but in particular if you're the largest landlord, why would you conceal anything? Right? If you're that big, I don't know. It's weird, but I agree with Joe. I want to know what a valet trash fee is.
Me too.
Maybe.
And then the other one I thought was interesting was fees to distribute utility bills. Like, what does that mean?
I don't know what that means either.
Yeah.
They must have some lease.
Take your trash out. Are they charging you to take your trash out, like valet for your trash can or something?
That's something.
Yeah, there's.
I just Googled it. Valet trash service is a waste removal service that picks up trash and recycling from doorsteps of residents in multifamily properties. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So in other words, you don't have to walk it. You don't have to walk from the door to the curb, right? Is that what it's saving you? Walking it from the door to the curb, so you pay for that. Okay, I can understand that.
Yeah.
If it was me, I'd just throw it out the window, let them pick it up and take it away. You know what I mean? It's ballet, right? You know?
There you go. All right, let's take a break and hear from our next partner.
Are you looking to elevate your business through exceptional content? Universe Media Publishing is your gateway to success. We understand that in the world of business, content is king, but not just any content. Your business deserves content that captivates, convinces, and converts your audience into clients. At Universe Media Publishing, we specialize in crafting SEO-rich web content, persuasive copywriting, and marketing copy that resonates with your audience. We don't just write, we engage, we connect, and we deliver results. Imagine your brand's voice amplified, your message crystal clear, and your presence dominating the digital landscape. That's the power of partnering with Universe Media Publishing. Don't let your business just blend in. Stand out, be heard, and make an impact. Connect with us at Universe Media Publishing, and let's turn your vision into reality. Visit universemediapublishing.com today. Your story, our expertise. Together, we'll create magic.
All right, let's get back to it. From Go Banking Rates. I'm a real estate expert. 6 waterfront cities that are becoming unaffordable. So it calls out San Jose, San Francisco, San Diego, LA, Honolulu, and Boston. It also says that, you'd assume all waterfront properties are like out of touch, unaffordable, but there's still a fair amount of cities where waterfront is within reach as far as like affordability and what people make in that region.
I just thought that I thought it was an interesting article for no other reason than I don't remember the last time any of those such cities were affordable. Like those are all high value markets, and I'm like, So I guess I was just trying to figure out wasn't sure what the point of the article was.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't have waterfront here in Colorado unless you're on a private lake or something. So.
Yeah. One thing I did learn about waterfront, and it's not pertinent to these cities in any way, but is, we had a property on the lake once, and we learned through an investment that deep water lakefront is worth much more than some of these smaller lakes where maybe you can't run gas powered boats or things of that nature. And I also learned that when you're not dealing with deep water and it's a bit shallower, you have the potential to have to do something called dredging, which is something we had to deal with once, which is not cheap, by the way. And you have to get permits from, in our case, it was the Corps of Engineers, the county, even the EPA. So I got to deal with them, and that was interesting. Not nearly as difficult as you would have thought. But it's waterfront is wonderful, but it comes with its own challenges. But I don't generally think of affordable with waterfront, but there might be places where it is. I'm sure there are.
Yeah, like you said, if you got a lake view or ocean view or mountains, there's going to be a premium because we all want that, right?
Yeah.
Let's jump to the next one. Vanity Fair, Elon Musk's Maybe Club and Bret Baier's $25 million mansion sale are fueling the Hamptons-ification of DC. It's a mouthful. So they're talking about people wanting to be closer to Trump to quote unquote bend his ear.
Sounds like a good day to be a realtor up there.
I guess so, yeah. There were some comments in there from some realtors that were actually pointing out that it's more affordable than other big meccas. Because see, if you want to buy a home in New York or Southampton, it could be 100 million to 150 million versus that 25 million, which is a bargain in Washington.
Right.
You can't afford not to buy a $25 million property. Anyway.
It was interesting. The article said the $100 million, it used the phrase, a really good house.
Yeah.
It could cost 100 million to 150 million. And I'm like, I don't know. I think I live in a pretty good house, but I'm not getting 100 million for mine. I'm just saying.
Different ways of looking at things, right?
Yeah. Perspective. Yes.
Yeah. Let's keep cranking. From New York Post, Barron Trump is launching his own luxury real estate company.
Oh, Jesus.
Right. He's teaming up with two of his, I think they're both buddies from high school. Yeah. Cameron Roxburgh and Carter Fulcher. Fulcher's, it sounds like his family's in, they've got a real estate firm in Idaho. And then they've got some kind of political connection to Congressman Russ Fulcher. So anyway, I guess they were trying to launch this, and then they kind of backed off on like a more public launch. Wait till the election was over. Not take the spotlight away from Dad. And if he lost, it might maybe change their their strategy. Who knows? So kind of interesting. The kid's 18, starting a luxury brand. Good for him.
This is one that I do want to watch closely, and I'll say it for this reason. When you hear I don't know if there's a more polarizing word in the world right now than the word Trump, right? And it's been that way for a few years now.
Yeah.
But the thing I've always told people, especially people that are in real estate, and I go, I hate Trump, and I'm like, and I've kind of maintained the same thought, is a guy like Trump, whether we agree with him, disagree with him, like him, hate his guts, whatever the case may be, I just say, you know what, but study the guy. Because the guy is clear, he's a master marketer, right? He's been very successful at marketing. I don't think anyone could question that. I mean, look at what he's done. The guy knows how to market, right? Both for and against, right? So we're not playing sides here. We're just talking the subject marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy knows how to market. The guy knows how to brand, right? We've watched him brand other people. We've watched him brand initiatives and things, and even his own speech, right? It's just he knows how to brand. And so I've gotten on a couple of his text message threads, and I'm telling you, the guy is a marketer. He knows how to brand. And so I always say, you know what, somebody like him, when he first got elected, I was like, you know what, whether he does a great job or a terrible job, I want to study his moves, because when do we get a chance to study someone who's a billionaire so easily? And both the positives and the negatives, right? Sure. I mean, some people will say he's incredibly flawed, and I'm like, you're right, he is incredibly flawed. By the way, so is everybody, right? To me, by the way, the fact that he's a flawed person is encouraging to me, because it's a refresher to me. Hey, if a flawed person can do what he did, so can I, right? It's actually an encouraging thing, rather than someone who's perfect and everything's right, because then it becomes this unattainable picture that's not reality. So I love that we can study what he's doing. I love that we can study his marketing. I love we can study his branding. And so when this article came out, and I had heard about this not too long ago, I was like, now we get to study, how does someone who's the son of a billionaire, I mean, just think about that for a moment. 18 years old and starting a luxury brand. Now the easy thing to say is, well, he's got Trump and he's got excuse and he has all this money and he has all the connections, and all of that may be fine and good and true. But are we just going to use that as an excuse to mask what we're capable of? Because I think that's what we're really good at doing, is we see that person and say, well, I can't do it. And boy, do we have a laundry list of why it won't work for us real fast. Rather than look at it and go, you know what, the kid's 18, he's going to start a luxury brand. If he can do it, why can't
Yeah, I love that.
Why can't anyone on this call right now? And I'm not saying we should, but I'm just saying, if we wanted to, what's to stop us?
Yeah.
Right. And so, to me, I love the story because it was a reminder of just simply what's possible. And that's why I'm very interested in seeing how it goes. Just, hey, if he can do it, let's see what moves he makes, because his dad's going to have a few opinions on the matter.
Right.
Let's see what some of those moves are, because guess what? We might see some moves we can emulate that could positively impact our business.
Good perspective.
So,
I just got certified in luxury through EXP, our brokerage. I'm like, is now really the best time to get into that? I think there's always opportunity. There's still going to be luxury properties being sold constantly like this one. But it definitely does take a hit in a down economy compared to other price ranges and stuff. So
true, but to what Joe said earlier, and I loved when Joe said this: the economy's up, it's down. So Joe's been Joe. You got 50 years of experience. You keep marketing. Guess what? Market's down. Okay, we're going to do deals. Market's up. Okay, we're going to do deals. Right? Just and the opportunity is always there. And so again, I love this article because it's a reminder of just that simple concept. The opportunity is there.
Yep.
Let's be real. Do we really think his dad would let him go do it if it wasn't going to work or didn't have a chance? No.
Well, I'm going to sort of interrupt here in that I'll agree with you that Trump knows how to brand, okay, and somewhat market. Businessman, I don't know. I mean, when you bankrupt 3 casinos, that's really, really, really hard to do unless you're doing it on purpose. And all the other companies, estate companies, liquor companies, all went nowhere. So I don't know that I think he's as smart as some people seem to think he is. But my personal view is, on an 18-year-old kid who's the son of a billionaire, I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock in his ability to get where he's getting by himself. But the people that I like to follow, okay, are, for example, my partner, real quick, is this guy, Wallace Al, who was one of my students at one time, and then now we work together. But here's a guy that came over from China, couldn't in 2002, 10th grade education, couldn't speak English, didn't know our customs. He learned speaking English from watching cartoons. He worked at Friendlies and gas stations and whatnot, to make a living. Discovered real estate, became a realtor. First year as a realtor, the guy earned $200,000. So I don't know brokers that make $200,000. He did this in 1 year. 2 years later, he was a multimillionaire. Those are the guys that I'm interested in. Not to say, Frank, that wouldn't be a good thing to follow, but how much credit you can give this kid, I don't know. He's going to be set up with people that know what they're doing to begin with. His old man will make sure of that, because Trumps don't fail. So you don't want him to fail. So he's going to be hooked up with guys that know what they're doing, or his old man wouldn't let him do it, at least in my opinion. And so I'd prefer to for me, okay, it's a much more interesting story to see somebody at zero to become a multimillionaire in a couple of years, rather than this kid who's got God knows what behind him to go into this because you don't know nothing about luxury houses. What's he know? Okay, I mean, what could he possibly know? So he's got to be set up with a bunch of. So I think it's the people he's set up with that you want to watch,
Right.
not him. They're the guys guiding this thing.
And that may be the case. That may be the case. And I would actually counter that by saying I'm interested in studying both. Because the reality is the person that starts at zero and succeeds, they're going to have an awesome story.
Oh,
the
yeah,
person
awesome.
the person that starts with a silver spoon in their mouth, to use an old paraphrase or old phrase, they're going to have a story. The reality is there's plenty of people that also started at zero that are still at zero. But there's people that also started with a silver spoon in their mouth that then blew it all.
Yeah.
So
many.
Right. So, and that's the beautiful thing is, regardless of where they start, a lot of people put a lot of weight on where they start. I don't really care where they start. It's one of the things I love from doing my podcast is I've heard so many stories. The one truth I've learned from my podcast is it really doesn't matter where you start. It's what did you do with what you had.
Exactly.
Whether you started as the son of a Donald Trump or you started at zero, what did you do? And by the way, some of the best stories I've heard, going back to the bankruptcies, and by the way, I do think he did a couple of those on purpose. I don't know.
I think he might have.
But here's the thing. What I really love is we all love to study the success story, right? But one of the biggest lessons I've learned is the best success stories are the people that they dealt with the dark times. In fact, that's part of my story now is I went through a very dark time. And so when you come back from those dark times, whether your name is Trump or you're the guy that started at zero or anywhere in between, and I'm not saying Trump's the pinnacle, he's just a well-known name, right? I'm sure there's people higher up and that's fine. But it's really about the journey. And so I love keeping an eye on a number of people to see how they deal with what they deal with. And there's so many lessons to be learned. And then again, and for me, the podcast we do, and I'm not trying to market the podcast, but the reality is every person I've interviewed has been a story that has just been deeply humbling because it's just every episode's a reminder of, wow, the world's a big place and my perspective is like this big compared to just the variety of viewpoints out there. So, which is why when I look, again, going back to the article, then it's about, hey, here's another viewpoint that just so happens to be well publicized. But I agree, Joe, that person that started at zero, or forget zero, they were in the hole by 50, 100, 20, 200 grand, and they came back. I think they're equally worth studying because there's beauty in everybody's story when they make it work.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah. Well, let's
I think starting with that much money exposes you to more risk in a way too, because you have the chance to make bigger losses.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
Yeah, like having a fund, free money. You can take some chances. We got two more articles. Let's keep it going from the World Property Journal. This came out on the 21st, so day one. Trump issues executive order on emergency price relief for U.S. housing. I'll read this. He emphasized reducing regulatory burdens, which would be expected. lowering housing costs, and expanding supply. The order mandates monthly updates on implementation, prioritizing worker prosperity, cost reductions, and halting policies that artificially raise prices. So I read into the article. I didn't see any solid plans, but he's basically kind of saying that's his goal. He wants all the people that can pull strings and stuff to be focused on that. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Well, the plan
I don't think he can do all that much, James. I think the result of whatever it is he's talking about is look. There's one thing we know about him just from the last 5 days. Okay, let's get all the rules out of here. Okay,
Yeah.
We don't need these rules. We don't need these limitations. Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. I don't really care what the hell it does to everybody. Let's just get them out of here. And I think that's what that article's really saying. Okay, what's he going to do? He's going to mandate home sale prices. You can't do that. Okay, he's going to mandate what the price of the materials to build the house are. You can't do that. So I believe that the whole thing is nonsense, except for the fact that he wants to do away with all the regulations, everything, and then capitalism will work. And that's how I see it, because he's got it in his head he can do. I know he's a king, but he's got things in his head that he thinks he can do as a king that he can't, because the market, it won't allow it. It's as simple as that. Now, I could be wrong, but that's how I read it.
Yeah. We got a comment here, too, from the AP News yesterday. Quote, Trump says he will demand that interest rates come down, but it won't be that simple.
You think?
Yeah. And we all know that. But the plan is actually in the last sentence of the order. It says, within 30 days of the date of this memorandum, the assistant to the president for economic policy shall report to me, and every 30 days thereafter, on the status of the implementation of this memorandum.
Right.
So to Joe's point, that's probably step one. Get rid of all the regulation. Let's see where we are in 30 days. So to me, when I read this, and I agree, nothing's going to happen overnight, to your point, James, about the interest rates. Demand interest rates come down. Will it work? I don't know. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. But the key, I think, is that last sentence. If he's really going to check it every 30 days, and maybe he will, right? I mean, it's an executive order. Maybe that is the plan, right? And then the note I go in my head is, okay, maybe as an investor, what I should do is every 30 days, what's going on in the market? How's the market been impacted 30 days from now, 60 days, 90? And just put a little thing on my calendar. It says every 30. Back when, and I'm using an example, back when COVID happened, remember we had the big shutdown, and what happened? We saw the whole unemployment going up. And it was like every month for several months, we were tracking unemployment numbers every month, because why? We wanted to know how it was going to impact what we're doing.
Yeah. And
our next moves. To me, this is no different, right? It's no different. It's like, okay, he says he's going to do that. Okay, great. So every 30 days, he's going to get a report. All right, well, then it might be worth checking in on the market a little more often for the next few months and see, hey, are we getting change? Maybe we will, maybe we won't. Maybe he'll do it. Maybe we hope he does a fantastic job, but maybe he'll do a terrible job. Maybe it'll be in the middle. But the value is, okay, he says he's going to be checking 30 days. Maybe we should too.
Yeah.
To see how it impacts our business.
Yeah, good advice. Well, let's jump to our last fun news item from Blog Herald. 7 phrases self-absorbed people tend to use without realizing how arrogant they sound. I'll just read them off. I know that. I'm the best at. I don't need anyone's help. No one understands me. You wouldn't get it. I don't care what other thinks. Or I always ellipsis. It kind of dives into why they're dismissive and whatnot. So I was reading it going, I don't know that I say those. Hopefully. I don't know.
I love them.
Yeah.
I love them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not?
One that isn't on here that bothers me, and when people say, listen, they start out that way. Oh, man, that grinds on me. Like,
yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah. And I sometimes I think it's just kind of maybe a cultural thing, maybe more of an East Coast thing. I don't know where, like, because I hear people saying that, but it does seem kind of like more assertive, like, listen, I'm going to tell you how it is, kind of. So anyway.
I think maybe it's because people don't like self-assured people. I mean, I don't need that. I'll do it myself. Okay. Yep. People make statements that, I don't need any help. I can, and then do it. Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of, I don't see a problem with it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's especially going to hold you back in real estate in a business where you need other people's help, and it's all about networking, right? If you say, "Oh, I don't need anybody's help. I don't need the help of any agents, contractors," you have to reach out to other people to do business.
I think, Brian, it applies there. I think it applies more overtly. Okay, of course you need contractors when you're building a house or whatever, but I guess it's all within the context of what was said to the person and then how they came back at it. You'd have to know, what the person he's talking to says to him to determine what that answer, that short kind of self-assured answer might be. You know what I'm saying? But I don't think they say it about, stuff like, I don't need any contractors. Well, if you're going to build a house, you got to have contractors, or else you're going to be very busy. But I don't have a problem with it. If now if they're bums and they're just saying it to be nasty or something, or to be curt, well, that's one thing. But when it's coming from somebody that I think actually could do what he says he's doing, I think it's all right. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah. This real estate's such a team sport, like a people business, which when I got into it, I didn't see that coming, and it's a good thing and can be a bad thing too. But you gotta be a good listener, I think.
Okay.
Ask the right questions and actually listen to the answers, right? Especially in creative real estate, like we're in. You're talking to a potentially a distressed seller. They've got a story, and you got to really listen and read between the lines. And not kind of bully our way around, like just you have two ears and one mouth. Right?
I found, James, when I talk to sellers, the simple question that does it every time is, "Hey man, it seems like I see you selling this house. It seems like a really nice place. How come you're selling it?"
Yeah.
And then you just sit down and you shut up. And the people that want to buy, they're kind of like, "Well, I want to downsize. I want to be closer to my kids." The people that need your help, well, my wife left me. I had a car accident this morning. I just got fired. My kids can't stand me, and my dog died. When you hear that stuff,
Yep.
It's you know what's going on. You know what I mean? So that's the question I pose to them. And of course, sometimes they tell me a little too much, way more than I want to know. But they just dump all over you when they are in trouble and need to get something done.
I did a speech. I did a speech course about a year ago. And it was a really fascinating experience. It was very helpful. It was cool. And so I did a 7-minute speech on the subject of listening. And one of the most interesting things I discovered about the subject of listening was if you go to your bookstore, I started with Amazon, right? Because we all go to Amazon, right? It's easy. And I was like, and we know we're business people, right? Like if we put in a number of subjects on Amazon, it's like page after page after page, right? Like it seems like endless choices. When I looked for books on Amazon for listening, by the time I got to, I think it was page 3, I was starting to see repeats, right? Okay, now it's not the hard copy, it's the Kindle version or the Audible version, right? And by the time you're like 5 pages in, you're like, oh, there's like that, not that many, which to me was mind boggling. So I literally remember getting in the car and I was like, surely it's not this crazy. And I actually went to Barnes and Noble. And I asked the people, I was like, where's your section on books on the subject of listening? Oh, it's mixed in with the self-improvement. Okay, cool. So show me where that is. It was a handful of books. Thousands and thousands of books. Number of titles on listening was a handful. It was very interesting to realize the subject that we all know is so critical. There wasn't a lot of books about it.
That's a good point.
Interesting. Yeah, look it up. It was very interesting.
Have you read the book Super Communicators? Any of you guys? I recommend that one. There's a lot on listening in there. I listened to it on Audible. It's about the only time I can read. Driving in the car. But yeah, that was a good one. Well, hey guys, that covers the news portion of the show. I'd like to thank our sponsors, United States Real Estate Investor Advertising, Universe Media Publishing, and Hybrid Real Estate Investing. And thanks to you guys as our guests, Frank Iglesias, Joseph Bodick, Brian Rutterow. In that order, Frank, Joe, and Brian, you want to tell people how they can connect with you if you want them to?
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm easy to find. I'm on all the social media networks, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. So easy to find, or you could go to my website, frankiglesias.com, or you can just call our office, 678-408-2228. Pretty easy to find. And we talk real estate. Happy to help you if I can in any way.
Fantastic.
To connect with me, the easiest way to do that would be through the website, which is executivementoring1.com. That's executivementoring1.com. And for those of you out there that may be looking for mentoring and coaching, that's what we do. You have 6 different programs, and you're welcome to go to that website, executivementoring1.com. Take a look and see what you see.
Great. Right.
And me, you can find me at hbrcolorado.com. I'm also on X. And that's about it.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks, guys. Again, I'm your host, James Brown. If you want to join our private investor club, just go to acceleratemycapital.com/invest. Also, thanks to our founder and producer, Antonio Holman, pulling the strings behind the scenes. Follow and subscribe to This Month in Real Estate Investing at thismonthinrealestateinvesting.com, or go to your favorite podcast app. If you run across any interesting news that you want us to cover, let us know, or events, or have suggestions for other awesome guests like we had today. Feel free to just share by emailing Antonio at UnitedStatesRealEstateInvestor.com. And remember, when one door closes, another door opens to financial freedom. Thanks.